Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's a new book that has just launched. Now, I'm yet to read the book. I'm still busy with a few other books, but it's called Malema Money, Power, Patronage. I will be reading this because it basically proves what I think almost all of us have known about Julius Malema. And it should be mentioned, right, that communists effectively are capitalists when no one's watching. And oftentimes, when you look at how communists behave around the world, you look, for example, at all of the communists' supporters here in South Africa, they're all super rich, right? And they all live in absolute wealth and luxury. And Julius Malema is no different. If I may quickly ask, if you don't like Malema and you think that it's important that more people see the news and see the coverage that I have, just hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and leave a comment because it helps. It really does. If by the end of this video you go, man, this guy doesn't have a clue, you can just unclick those buttons. It's that simple. It's free. Enjoy the video. It's sort of, it's this grift of selling the people what they want to hear whilst not living as you preach, right? And sadly, we live in a country where education has become such a luxury. I hate to say it, but that is true. The vast majority of this country's black people are well undereducated, with schools that are nowhere close to even being on par with that of other developing nations. We're not even talking about developed nations. And I say black people because it is black people that are primarily suffering under the policies of the ANC. Remember, a lot of white people have the ability to send their children to former C-class schools, right, or Class C schools, where the education is really, really good. Because a lot of those schools will have extra subjects like, advanced mathematics and stuff of that nature, because they already know that the national syllabus is dog poo. And so they will add more classes to it to ensure that their kids actually get a proper education. Black kids don't have that money. Their parents don't have access to those means. And so these kids are sent to these rural schools where the education they're getting, they may as well not get an education because the teachers don't know what the hell they're doing. The syllabus is absolutely terrible. And so what happens is these young people go into the world, and it's so easy for corrupt and evil individuals like Julius Malema to completely sort of sway them and indoctrinate them and brainwash them into thinking that he and he alone can solve and fix their problems. But if you are an EFF voter, you need to understand that Julius Malema is as bad, if not worse, than people like Ramaphosa, than people like Zuma. And this book actually highlights it in great detail. And they provide all of the receipts. They actually gained access to court cases and court filings that was kept secret. Now, ordinarily, the court will only keep things secret when it's like children that's involved in it, right? So, for example, with molestation and pedophilia and stuff like that, that's when the court will keep the sort of proceedings completely private. These proceedings being kept private is very interesting. The court normally doesn't do that, and specifically for public figures, the court has almost a vested interest in not keeping it private because the public has the right to know what their politicians are up to. But this entire just article from News 24, and I must say, it's News 24, but luckily it's not Ramaphosa, so you can believe it. The only guy that will never be attacked by News 24 is Cyril Ramaphosa. Everyone else is fair game for News 24. But it basically reads like a comedy show. There are so many times in this book where Julius Malema is in the court, right? He's being sued by SARS, and then the case just goes away. Or there's another case that was brought against On Point Engineering. I don't know if you guys remember. This was sort of how Julius Malema had his start, and they do actually make the argument here that it all started with On Point Engineering, where he just got flushed with cash from everywhere, right? That case was dismissed in 2015, despite the fact that now that they've had access to these court documents, there are so many witnesses. There's more than enough there to restart the case. But as they saw communication between Garinel from AfriForum and the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority, the National Prosecuting Authority has no interest in opening this case. So it starts off with effectively the following. Julius Malema currently sits on property valued at about 21.6 million rand. The problem with all of these property values are that that's not the real expense. So what Julius Malema basically did is he bought properties, then he completely stripped everything and rebuilt it. One of his properties was rebuilt twice. His farm, for example, in Limpopo, also just massively rebuilt on, and he never actually got new evaluations. So we don't know what the actual valuation is of his properties. The one thing they do make clear here is that if you take his salary from Parliament, which is 1.2 something million a year before taxes, if you take his money from Parliament and you take the actual payments, just the payments, the mortgages on his properties, it's way more than his monthly salary from the government. So clearly the government does not equate for where this man is getting all of this money from. They say here, benefiting from a variety of illegal schemes, Malema became multi-millionaire in the past decade. It is clear that his annual before-tax salary of 1 million from Parliament, which he received from 2014 onwards, cannot stretch this far. Then you have this, for example, Project Caesar. This is SARS trying to go after Julius Malema for 32.9 million rand in unpaid taxes. Now, Julius Malema actually, thanks to these new court documents, admit to SARS behind closed doors, because remember, all of this was sealed, but he admits to SARS that all of the regalia, the shirts and the caps and the berets and the red overalls that EFF was wearing in the early days, he just took all of that. He didn't give it to the party. He just put it in his pocket and he left. So basically, this man was selling clothes for cash, which is illegal, by the way. You're not allowed to do that. A political party is a business unto itself. So, and this actually led in 2015 to one of the first big sort of civil wars within the EFF. And here you have it. Like the time he confessed to SARS to having pocketed the proceeds from the sales of EFF regalia in the first few months of the party's existence. Accusations of Malema dipping into EFF's money was a trigger for the party's first significant revolt in 2015, and a fact that Malema later publicly denied. The On Point scheme led to Malema being charged with racketeering, corruption, and fraud before the case was thrown out of court in 2015. Guys, this is like everywhere. Like, as you read through all of this, you just go, wait, what the hell is actually going on here? Like every single court case that is brought before him, he just sort of magically makes it go away. When he gets into trouble with the government, it just sort of magically disappears. In every single case that's been brought against him for human rights abuses in terms of the Human Rights Commission's anti-hate speech, it all just continuously goes away. This man might actually be the most protected individual in all of South Africa. I wouldn't be surprised if he's more protected than than Cyril Ramaphosa himself. The VBS scandal, by the way, for those of you that don't remember, where Julius Malema made millions off of it, and just to put this into perspective, if you read through this article alone, I'll read the book and I'll give you guys feedback on the book. But if you just read through this article, Julius Malema didn't leave the ANC because of some dispute between him and Jacob Zuma. Julius Malema left the ANC because he recognized that he can make a lot more money on his own. The ANC was sort of holding him back, whereas if he was in charge of his own political party, he could really start picking things up. And the nice thing here is that he still has a lot of contacts inside the government, which allows him to sort of connect businesses to people in the government that can give tenders and contracts. And that way he also gets super, super rich off of everything. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. As you read through this article, just the stuff that this man has gotten away with, and nothing ever happens to him. Nothing. Everything just seems to go away. And then no court cases are ever brought again. SARS has not started up again with him. Like, you and I try to, bamboozle SARS, we will end up in jail. Like, SARS will not let it go. Whereas with Julius Malema, SARS is just sort of like, oh, you owe us money, but, what can we do? We're just a small, tiny little revenue service. What on earth could we do about you being an absolute scumbag, thief, and a racist for that matter. Although I would actually not be surprised because, as it turns out, in this article they actually show that Julius Malema was personally behind the squashing of the protests in 2018 at the Ivan Platz mine in Chamahani, Limpopo. I've never heard of this place. I might have heard of it, but I have no idea. I know Mokopane. I know Mokopane pretty well. And according to this book, the owner, being white, but he's a friend of Malema, they're in business together. Malema helped him quash the protests to make sure that his mine could continue operating. So I don't even necessarily think Malema is a racist. Just want to put that out there. I don't think Malema believes when he sings "Kill the poor, kill the farmer." I don't think he believes a word of it. I think Malema says it because he knows that it will get him patrons, it will get him followers, because there's a lot of people that is looking for someone to blame. And it's always nice if you have at least someone that you can point to. And I think Malema genuinely is just an opportunist. He will do whatever is required to stay in power within the EFF, but then to keep the business going. I don't even think he cares about being president, just FYI. He wouldn't say no because it would allow him to steal way more, but I don't think he even cares about that. I think from Malema's perspective, as long as he can stay within the EFF and the EFF can sort of stay around the 10% mark, he can keep getting a crap ton of money, because being in a political party means that a lot of the finances of political parties are private. They don't have to share as much about their financial sort of endeavors. So he can funnel millions of rands through his political party to himself and to some of his friends without anyone looking too closely. It's an interesting read, a very, very interesting read. A lot of it is just sort of padding. They could probably have cut this down by at least 2/3, and it would still have been a good article. I gave you all of the most important stuff. I'll go through the book and I'll let you know exactly. But the point here is just Julius Malema is an absolute fraud. And if you're still voting for the EFF, you really are a fool for thinking that this man is going to stand up and fight for you. The MK isn't going to stand up and fight for you. The EFF isn't going to stand up and fight for you. The ANC isn't going to stand up and fight for you. Only you can make your own life better. And the only way for you to actually do that is to get to work. Vote for a government that will create economic growth so that you can get to work and make your own life better. If you like what I do and you think more people should have access to the type of content that I make, please consider hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and leaving a comment, because it really does help. Massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons and the YouTube channel members. To become a patron, hit the link in the description down below, or just hit the join button right below this video. As always, ladies and gentlemen, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I shall see all of you in the next one. Peace.